This week on Jerusalem Dateline, Hamas pummels southern Israel with rockets. Israel strikes back, then quiet. Will it last? And U.S. fighters join Israel to battle terrorist arson near Gaza border. Plus, a chilling eyewitness account of proceedings against American pastor in Turkey. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Julie Stahl, filling in for Chris Mitchell. We're coming to you today from Stiri, the southern Israeli city known as the bomb shelter capital of the world. Hamas says it has a truce with Israel after the latest round of rocket and air strikes. Israel says quiet will be met with quiet. But as senior editor John Woggy reports, that doesn't do much to calm the nerves of the residents along the Gaza border.
The current lull began after a Hamas Grad rocket landed in Beersheba, Israel's third largest city. Israel responded by blowing up a 5-story building it says was a Hamas headquarters. For more than 10 years, Israelis living near the Gaza Strip have had to put up with deadly rocket attacks, flaming kites and balloons, terror tunnels, and much more. And this is ground zero, the city of Stiri.
The children is very frightened. They're scaring, they're crying.
During a 24-hour period, Hamas pounded Israeli communities near Gaza with nearly 200 rockets. Now it's quiet. Asi Anikovich is a farmer. He says even his cows give less milk because of the rockets.
This situation is not good for the cows.
Despite the current halt in fighting, Israel's security cabinet directed the army to act with force against terrorist perpetrators.
The IDF is committed to defend the state of Israel, its civilians, and its sovereignty, and we are ready and prepared for different scenarios to come.
But Yedidya Harush, who lives in a border community, says the government needs to deal more harshly with Hamas.
Their goal is to continue this conflict as long as they can. We have to understand Hamas, with a long-term agreement, Hamas is no longer relevant. And their entire existence is based on hatred and killing and death. We make our lives holy while they make their death.
Joining me here now in Stiri is CBN senior editor John Woggy. John, good to have you with us. Tell me, what's the background behind this conflict between Israel and Hamas?
Really, I think you have to go back, Julie, to 1987-88, the founding charter of Hamas, which calls for the destruction of Israel. And for the last 10 years specifically, and a little more than that actually, the rockets have been flying to places like Stiri and all along the Gaza Strip. And as a result, these people here can't tolerate that on a daily basis. That's just, you know, it's not only deadly, it's damaging to property, it causes great stress. And so what's happened is the IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, 3 times and maybe 4 now, have had to go into Gaza, rout out the Hamas infrastructure to the extent that they can, and get out again. In the meanwhile, they've been developing systems like the Iron Dome, which are shooting down some of the rockets, making life better here. And so actually, you look around, and this town is growing from what it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, we just saw the buildings on the outskirts of town.
Exactly. The bomb shelters where people used to run under like something in a playground, now they have big concrete structures to flee to, even in their own homes. And so it's becoming a place where you see that the residents here are not leaving. They're not going to leave in the face of what Hamas is doing and the other terror groups. And so you really have a kind of standoff until Israel's willing to go in and completely take care of Hamas, which up till now, because of international public pressure, has not happened.
Do you think that there's any way around just totally getting rid of Hamas? Can they make a peace deal, do you think?
They can make a truce deal. But a long-term peace deal, unless Hamas changes, the Leopard changes its spots, Israel would have to go in and completely wipe out the Hamas infrastructure in Gaza, and that would take possibly weeks, and they're just not ready for that kind of international outcry.
Yeah, do you think they'd have to stay in Gaza then?
They'd have to stay for some time, yes.
Well, thank you very much, John, for joining us.
Sure.
You know, it's quiet here in Stiri right now, but we want you to take a look at what it's like when Stiri is under attack.
In the streets of Stiri, panic once again as the sirens signal incoming rockets from Gaza. Hamas says the barrage is retaliation for Israel's earlier killing of 2 Hamas snipers who were said to be in training and not firing at Israeli troops. The terror group's response sent stressed-out Israelis heading for shelters, and Israel's military pounded Hamas targets in the Gaza Strip with strike after strike. This wave of bombardment comes after days of debate here in Jerusalem about whether Israel should agree to a 5-year Egyptian-brokered ceasefire with Hamas. Now, with roads and beaches and summer camps closing in southern Israel and weary residents sick of sirens, the talk has turned to military strategy. At least one Knesset member, a retired colonel, is calling for the heads of the Hamas leadership. And U.S. Middle East negotiator Jason Greenblatt tweeted, "Another night of terror and families huddling in fear as Israel defends itself. This is the Hamas regime's choice. Hamas is subjecting its people to the terrifying conditions of war again." Meanwhile, UN leaders warn that Gaza residents face impending disaster, with severe fuel shortages already plaguing the city. But with more than 100,000 Israelis under fire, the fuel problem may not be Gaza's greatest worry in the days ahead. Before the rocket attacks, Israeli firefighters battled arson fires caused by some 1,200 Hamas terror attacks over the last months, burning more than 7,500 acres of farmland and nature. So American volunteers came to fight the flames with them. Palestinian terrorists are using balloons and kites, combined with a summer wind, to carry their fire from Gaza to Israel. We found this piece of kite in a scorched field. Behind me in the tree are more pieces of the kite, and behind the tree is the Gaza Strip.
Some people can think it's like a toy, a children's toy, but it's a very deadly weapon, and we are fighting every day to prevent any achievement from these terrorists.
That's when the Emergency Volunteers Project, a U.S. organization dedicated to assisting Israel, stepped in to help.
Our firefighters have assisted putting out literally dozens of fires over the past week here in southern Israel.
Sponsored by the Jewish Federations of North America, spokesperson Eitan Charnoff says when the volunteers arrive, they're ready to go.
Our American volunteers are trained in advance about how to work here, not just in terms of what equipment is different, what tactics are different, what threats are different, but they're also taught the culture.
In February of 2017, I came on a trip to be trained. That way when we get here in a deployment, they don't have to take time to train me. I get off the airplane and I go to work.
Corey Ray and Aston Bright are both American firefighters.
Firefighting, there's a universal language to it. You pull a hose and you spray the water on the fire. You pull an axe and you cut something. Firefighters, we like to break things, so it's universal.
But some things are different, like fighting fire while under fire.
This is actually an armor-plated, bulletproof fire engine. It's the first time I've ever been on a fire engine quite like this, but that's necessary because we are so close to the Gaza border.
Ray and Bright, both Christians, say their faith played a part in their decision.
I can't build houses, I'm not a doctor, but I can put out fires, and so that's how I serve. As a believer, the Bible says to be a friend of Israel, and the Jews are the chosen people, and so I felt led to serve in some way, and that's all I know how to do.
Shmulik Friedman, an Israeli fire service commander, said working with Americans is about more than fighting fires.
It's much more than 10 firefighters because it's the spirit of the brotherhood between our two nations.
We have to protect the state of Israel and the Jewish people, and the United States is here in this fight with them, and we're glad to be here.
John Wagi, CBN News, near the Gaza-Israeli border.
Turning to another front, U.S. sanctions hit Iran, adding pressure to a regime already under attack from the inside. Iranians are rising up, furious over their terrible economy and the tyranny of the Ayatollahs. Gary Lane has details.
The U.S. sanctions target Iran's technology, automobile, currency, and precious metal industries. The punitive measures are expected to further damage the country's economy and exert more pressure on the regime. In Iran, Trump's strategy is already having an effect. A worsening economy has led to anti-government protests. A growing number of Iranians are demanding an end to the regime. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praised President Trump's decision, calling it an important moment for Israel and the world.
I call on the countries of Europe who talk about stopping Iran to join this move. The time has come to stop talking. The time has come to do. And that is exactly what the United States is doing. And that's what Europe should do.
But the European Union is unlikely to join in. It's taking actions to shield businesses from penalties imposed for violating U.S. sanctions. They ensure lucrative oil, banking, and investment deals with the Islamic Republic can move forward when a tougher set of sanctions takes effect in November. President Rouhani denounced the sanctions, calling them psychological warfare. But he opened the door to direct talks with preconditions, a U.S. apology and payback.
If the U.S. government is ready today to negotiate about paying compensation to the Iranian nation from 1953 until now over its meddling in the life of Iranian people, we are ready for talks to see how they are going to compensate and pay us back.
President Obama already returned at least $150 billion from a canceled arms deal. Middle East analyst Robert Spencer.
It was the Shah's regime that had made the arms deal that was canceled, and so it did not by right belong to the Islamic Republic.
And even if the U.S. stands alone against Iran, Spencer says Trump's approach may be enough to make a huge difference.
He has reversed the policies of appeasement that Obama pursued so indefatigably for 8 years. And this could bring about the downfall of the regime, which would be good for the Iranians and good for the world.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
Coming up, a chilling eyewitness account of Turkish proceedings against American Pastor Brunson. Pastor Andrew Brunson remains under house arrest in Turkey, awaiting his hearing in October. While many call recent proceedings against him a kangaroo court, the millions praying for him had no idea what was happening inside. Until now. Jennifer Wishon brings us this first-hand account.
A courtroom designed to make Pastor Brunson feel defeated, bogus witnesses bribed by the prosecution, and the power of forgiveness. An eyewitness takes us inside Pastor Brunson's persecution in Turkey.
The court used to be like a basketball court or some sort of sports court that has been turned into a courtroom right next to a very large prison. And way up front, there are 3 judges on a raised dais, and very low is Pastor Andrew Brunson, witnesses for the prosecution, and Pastor Brunson's lawyer. There are over 500 chairs between him and the area where observers like me and his wife are allowed to seat.
Christina Arriaga of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Liberty attended Pastor Brunson's most recent hearing. Seated beside his wife Noreen, she watched in disbelief.
Because Pastor Brunson cannot see very well from far away, anytime he looks back towards his wife, she stands up and puts her hand over her heart so he knows he's not alone. Pastor Brunson sat there while he heard former church members, people probably that he baptized, people that he had tea with, testify against him. And the judge at one point turned to him around noontime and asked Andrew Brunson to speak for himself. And he said, "My faith teaches me to forgive, so I forgive those who just testified against me." There was a chill in the room. I know his wife, who was graceful and extremely strong, probably found it to be a natural answer, but I was stunned and moved to tears when he said that.
Why would his church members, people that he was intimate with, testify against him?
I imagine these people were under tremendous pressure to keep their jobs or feed their families. We don't know what kind of threats they were under.
Brunson has been transferred from prison to house arrest, but Arriaga fears that puts him at risk.
But he's in a terribly dangerous situation because the Brunsons are portrayed in the Turkish press as people who are against the state of Turkey, and I have great fears there's going to be an increase of incitement to violence against him, and no one will be able to stop a mob that tries to go and kill him.
Armed with sanctions and the power to withhold F-35 fighter jets Turkey wants to purchase, U.S. officials from the White House to Congress continue to pressure Turkey's President Recep Erdogan to release Brunson. His next hearing is October 12th. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
Up next, do you know which color the ancient biblical priesthood, the Israeli flag, and outer space have in common? ancient biblical priesthood, the Israeli flag and outer space have one thing in common, and that's the color blue. That's the theme of a new exhibit at the Bible Lands Museum in Jerusalem. Take a look. Did you know the ancient blue and purple dyes in biblical times were extracted from snails?
Tchelet is the blue color that was used to dye the most important fabrics and textiles. Tchelet was extracted from a sea snail, the murex snail. In the ancient world, the Phoenicians were known as the purple people. Phoenicia, actually, the origins of the word is purple. And the color was Tchelet blue ad argaman. Argaman is like a purple.
Blue and purple are mentioned dozens of times in the Hebrew scriptures, and those colors are the theme of a new exhibit, Out of the Blue, here at the Bible Lands Museum in Jerusalem.
We decided to do an exhibition that looks at the origins of the color blue, everything from the chemistry and the original types of stones and attempts to copy blue and make a lasting color, and the dye.
The exhibit traces the color's history in the Middle East from pagan cultures to the Bible. Tchelet and argaman were used in the tabernacle's curtains and veil, and God commanded the Jewish people to wear blue in their clothes. Speak to the children of Israel. Tell them to make tassels on the corners of their garments through their generations, and to put a blue thread in the tassels of the corners, that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of the Lord and do them. One rabbi asks why the tchelet is different from other colors. He says it's because it looks like the sea, which looks like the sky, which looks like sapphire stone, and that looks like the throne of glory.
It's almost like magic. You have this jar of this very yellowish gooey liquid, and you dip your wool in, and when you pull it out, it looks yellow for a moment, and the longer it's in the air, it starts to transform color in front of your eyes, and as you open it up, it basically takes on the hues that are such an exquisite array here. Only those that were in royalty or of religious significance wore colors that were so exquisitely dyed.
There's also this amazing Persian jar from the time of King Darius in the book of Daniel.
It's a jar made of alabaster, and if you look at it closely, you can see a little bit of purple tint to it. And King Darius' jar has 4 different inscriptions, 4 languages written on it.
And a tiny scroll of the book of Esther, where the people are dressed in blue and purple. Fast forward to modern times, where a huge Israeli flag is the first one to fly at the United Nations after Israel became a state.
The inspiration for the flag of the modern state of Israel was something that was discussed by the early Zionists in a variety of design options, but all of them seemed to be based on the same basic principle, that it had to reflect the prayer shawl of the Jewish people, the talit.
Another smaller flag wraps up the exhibit. It flew aboard the world's first international space flight in 1975. So from snails to outer space, for Israel, it's all about the color blue. Still ahead, the best-selling book of all time tops the list again with a new version for Jews and Christians. The Bible is the best-selling book of all time, and it's still going strong. This latest version just hit #1 on Amazon's list, and as Chris Mitchell reports, it's designed to appeal to both Christians and Jews.
The Israel Bible is the only Bible that's exclusively dedicated to the land of Israel, the people of Israel, and the God of Israel.
Rabbi Tuli Wise of Israel 365 saw the 70th anniversary of Israel as a great opportunity for a special version of this kind.
The Bible has had such a great impact on civilization, yet it's also been the greatest source of friction and division between Jews and Christians, who both claim to love the Bible. And so now the vision for the Israel Bible is that we're going to have the opportunity to use the Bible as a source of unity between Jews and Christians and everybody who loves the Bible.
So this is the Hebrew Scriptures, it's not the New Testament or the Brit Hadashah. So why would Christians want to be able to read the Israel Bible?
Well, first of all, and I'm not a Christian, but I know that for Christians who want the Bible that Jesus read, he read the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh. That's something that my Christian friends have pointed out to me, that this is the Bible that Jesus read. I think that there's another aspect as well that the prophets talked about, how in the future, Isaiah says, in the future, in the end of days, the non-Jews are going to say to the Jewish people, teach us the Torah, teach us the Bible.
It comes with special features in the 929 chapters.
Number one is that it opens in the format of a Hebrew book. It opens backwards. A lot of our customers are saying, hey, wait a minute, my Bible opens backwards. It's not a mistake. We did it on purpose. All of the verses about Israel have been highlighted and transliterated so that anybody could actually read the Hebrew for themselves. And then, of course, on the bottom of every chapter, we have study notes.
Wise feels this version comes at an important time because of the inaccurate criticism directed at Israel.
More than any other time in history, the world's eyes are focused on Israel. You have world leaders who are saying that Israel is occupying this land. And this Bible shows that we're not occupying this land. This is the land that God gave to us. Everybody needs to be more educated in God's Word, and especially if you're confused, if you're not familiar, which side to take, to be supportive of Israel, to be on the fence, to be anti-Israel, just read the Bible.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
That's it for this edition. Thanks for joining us. And remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And remember, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, the persecuted church, and the Israeli-Gaza border. I'm Julie Stahl. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.